The biggest city in Canada is also the biggest city in this country that's affected by this power outage. Peter Mansbridge joins us now from Toronto with the latest on the impact there. And Peter, what can you tell us? Peter, can you hear me? It's Ian in Vancouver.
Okay, Ian, I've got you now. I can tell you we just heard for the first time, just a few moments ago, some sense that some power may be starting to come back on. Some indications from the city of Burlington, which is west of Toronto, that the power has come back on in parts of Burlington. Now, you know how these stories go, Ian. Things change over time. We'll see whether that's an indication that things are starting to come back on, as Mayor Bloomberg was suggesting would be happening in New York within the early hours of this evening. It's quite the scene here. Needless to say, many of us have been on our holidays. I picked a heck of a day to come back from the bush to head towards the city and walked into this. It's been quite the scene here. But, you know, I heard you a couple of moments ago talking about the pictures you had seen from Toronto and the sort of orderly sense on the part of the people who are leaving office towers, heading away down the streets. I got to tell you, that is the scene that I saw coming in to Toronto. It took me about an hour coming down through the main thoroughfare down that cuts the city almost in half, Avenue Road, University Avenue. It's packed, it's crowded, but it's very orderly. And almost at every intersection there are citizens directing traffic. Perhaps every fourth or fifth intersection there are police officers there directing traffic. But for the most part, this has been a citizen-inspired evacuation, if you will, that's been taking place through the streets of Toronto. Now, I can't speak for what's been going on in those big towers that you see behind me. Obviously, in a lot of buildings in this city, elevators have stopped with people in them, and that causes all kinds of problems, as we can imagine. Much of it in the mind. It's not a nice thing to be trapped inside an elevator, especially when you have no sense of how long these things could be trapped for. We hear that in many cases people have, as in New York, people have been released from the elevators, have been rescued in effect, as the different elevator companies have done their work. Meanwhile, it's a very slow process here. The city's things struck, as you know, about 4:15 in the afternoon, Eastern time, just as rush hour was starting to build. And so that created its own sense of chaos, if you will. But I use that term really loosely because what I saw was far from chaos. It was very orderly, as the words you described just looking at those pictures. There was traffic tie-ups, no doubt about that, but as the traffic was heading south to get the expressways out of town, the people who were walking came off subway systems, came off buses, came out of office towers, were walking, most of them walking north. It was all very orderly, lots of smiles on faces, lots of people listening to radios. It's a big day for radio in Toronto, as most television networks not being seen, obviously, with no power, but battery-powered radios are keeping people informed.